Welcome everyone to the Loverage Legacy show here on March 19th. And I'm Dr. Stephen Hobbs. I'm your host. And this show is about the first 9 videos in the Loverage Legacy series. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over them and just recap to a certain extent what was in each of them, because I also have an announcement of what's coming next. And so it's this notion of now what? Now, the great thing about this recap, this review, is that it gives me a chance to sort of summarize in my own head what it is that I've covered, but more importantly, to bring some focus, a way to improve and strengthen your legacy approach that you're going to use. Now, I'm going to just remind everyone it's a legacy approach, not legacy avoidance. Sometimes people will take on, well, how do I avoid dealing with this versus how do I approach it and be able to, in a sense, leverage it. And therefore, I use the word leverage it. And what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to go over each video and share a couple of points from each one. And to start off with, the first one was covered legacy and leverage, the story that connects them, and a little bit about aging. So let me just briefly review what is legacy. Legacy is about the useful what's that you gift others so that they might learn something from your lived experience. So the legacy is about your gifts of time, effort, and money. And how is it that you put them into action about being and having you for the world, with the planet, and from the whole? Now, these gifts of time, effort, and money is also a way for others to learn something from your lived experience. All the things that you have done, places you've been, that will be of service to others so that they might learn something from your lived experience. Now, the concept of leverage is a play on the word leverage. I moved out the E and the O. And leverage is a way in which to use something to a mechanical advantage. Leverage is to use something from a heartfelt advantage, to be wholehearted. And therefore, in the word leverage is love and rage. And I bring that forward not in the sense of saying that the opposite of love is rage. It's just to remind you that there is this love approach and there is this rage avoidance that we encounter. Sometimes we call it this notion of support and challenge, pain and pleasure. We might use other words like that. But interestingly enough, lover and age is there in the word as well. So to be your own lover and lover of others through the ages, through the time of your life. And I've always liked that second version of it because it just reminds us of how important this notion of me, myself, and I, and how I express that as I interact with others. This between story of those two, and I linked them up together because I wanted to find a verb that would go with this outcome. So this notion of an action to get an outcome, and that's therefore Loverage Legacy was just a quick way to remind me, and therefore in sharing with you, is the importance of this leverage of legacy for living an extraordinary life, for co-creating well-living workplaces and well-living communities, eco-creating the wealthy world, the notion of evolving this legacy approach that you have for your life. It can be used in a lot of ways in which just to remind you of this notion of life and living it to its fullest. this extraordinary life that we've given access to. Now, what I also wove into that first video was the story of aging and finding ourselves. I'll speak for myself at this point in time. I'm aging, and how do I approach that aging? What sort of words might I use around it? And the interesting thing is I know that there is a word older because we talk about years old. I often refer to it as years young because it's a way for me just to remind myself of the importance of all of that which I have experienced. And I'm still young in my approach of living my life. So why not talk about years young rather than talk about years old? And therefore, this story of aging, well, I know that there is some physical aspects to it, and maybe some people have this notion of fatigue, and so other injuries and illnesses come on. It's how you approach it and what you're doing with your life that becomes so important. And that's why Loverage Legacy is a way in which to deal with, bring another way of looking at this notion of aging. And so I leave that with you from video number one. And with each video, I'll put the link in the show more notes if you want to go and watch it in a little bit more depth. Now, video number two is where I introduced the legacy matrix. It's a 3x3 matrix. In other words, it has 9 rectangles or squares in it, if you want to imagine it that way. And what I did was I shared a little bit about the first row, and it's if you take the 3 rows, it's the bottom row, and what I did was I worked up from bottom to the second one to the third one. That's how I talked about the matrix. And this matrix was created as a way in which to give you a map that, upon working with your legacy in this notion of leveraging your legacy, you had an opportunity to look at this matrix and help map out, organize in your own mind a way in which to move forward. And depending on what you knew about your legacy, how you were organizing your legacy, delivering your legacy, you had this matrix to work with. So this first row, very much about the notion of grounding yourself, okay, was from the place of understanding the resources, the intention, and the branches. So a little bit about each one. The resources is what resources do you bring to your legacy? I spoke about this notion of the gifts of time, effort, and money. That's one of the resources that you have. But you may also, over time, have created a portfolio of products that you may have created, or processes, services that you have offered. And if you were to bring all of those together, it's amazing what you have that you can share with others. And that's the resources, just as it is to tap into the resources that are around you to support this notion of moving forward with your legacy. The next one is the intention. Now, this is where I encourage you to look at your intention words, because words matter, legacy matters, legacy intention matters, and the words that are associated with your legacy intention, because these words help you to understand how you connect in being for the world, with the planet, and from the whole. And when you understand these words, it's a way in which to be able to, in a sense, freeze that reality. So when you go to share it with others, they can come to understand it, and then they can join with you, or you can join with them in bringing your legacy story, their legacy story, the combined legacy stories forward in being for the world, with the planet, and from the whole. And so that's where the intention comes from. And there's a course that's available for that, and it will be brought brought online in the next couple of weeks. The third component of this is an understanding of the 5 branches of legacy. And those branches is a way in which to just, again, understand the basics of legacy and how it unfolds for you in your life. So the first one is connecting the story of legacy and your life. What's your life about? Who are you? What are you doing? And just coming to understand, who am I? The next one is to look at leadership and to take a look at the sense of, in what ways have you been leading others, leading yourself in involvement with others, just taking into consideration this notion of leading and the approaches that you have used. The next one is the legal aspect, and that's about your will and your living will. It's about how you want to distribute what you have that you want to give to others, and some considerations there. The literacy aspect is to tap into the wealth springs of wisdom so that you can just figure out what's your hierarchy of values as you, in a sense, live um, from this legacy that you intend to leave. And there is a phrase, and I'll just reframe it. It's to leave the legacy you intend to live. And understanding these wealth springs is a way in which to be able to take into consideration the 10 areas that give you this notion of hierarchy of values. So you can figure out, do I need to work with all 10? Do I want to work with 3 of them? And it just gives you a little bit more about understanding this leverage of your legacy. And the 5th branch is leverage. And it is to take into consideration this notion of all of what it is that's unfolding and infolding and unfolding and infolding as you move through your life, and you're looking at these transition time, looking at this next 50, as I call it, this aging of your life, however you wish to work with it. This notion of leveraging it, what are the ways in which you want to bring that forward for yourself? So that was the branches. Now, the next video goes over the dashboard, the courses, and the project. Now, the dashboard just is a reminder of taking into consideration the values, the challenges, the project, the contributions, the stories that are involved as you move into bringing your legacy into your life and then sharing it with other people. So it's just going over that dashboard just to give you certain things that you can measure and monitor as you move forward. The courses aspect of it is, what are the other learnings that you need to be able to bring into bringing your legacy forward? I'll just give a couple examples: eco-ethical decision making, responsive listening, educating approaches that you might want to use. These are the courses, other ways in which to bring those tools and services and techniques to the foreground, because maybe you didn't quite have them all known in your life, or you just want to come to know them so you can weave them into what's taking place. The notion of the project is the selection of project that you wish to work with. There's many different ways in which to do it. Everything from, maybe there's a project of leaving a bench in a really wonderful spot where people could come and sit and be able to meditate, and you leave a little plaque on the bench, and it speaks to something, a phrase that is in your life, and you can bring that and have that mounted, where it's a great place for you to go and learn a little bit more about your own legacy. But also there are the projects where you could get involved with something like a water or a tree planting in another part of the world. these eco projects. Some of them can be smaller or bigger, maybe even in your own region or even in your own city. There are these other kind of projects that you might want to get involved with. And again, a service club that you might want to get involved with, and being able to do projects with them. I'm involved in a service club, and I help to produce a flip magazine and PDF on a quarterly basis that connects the story of growing and living, and the notion of trees, and a thread of optimism and resilience. And I help to produce that. So that's one of my projects that I work on, and it's through a service club. Now, the next video was about the content, the accelerator, and the pathways. And the content aspect is, what is it of what you have available that you truly want to bring out, and how do you structure that content? And that might be done through, maybe you want to be a speaker, maybe you want to be a podcaster, maybe you want to do courses online or face to face, maybe you want to do coaching or mentoring. There's different ways in which you can bring the content that you want to share, and in some ways need to share with others. And what is that, and how do you package that up? And that then gets you into the world of the accelerator. It's an option that actually confirms all of what I've talked about prior to. So for some people, they might actually just jump straight into the accelerator world and actually prepare everything in one go, versus the notion of the matrix might give you a sense of things that you can move through over time. And then there's the pathway, and there are many different pathways that you can work with. And I'm actually going to pull the word path out of way and talk about wayfinding, or finding the path, finding the hallway, finding the runway, finding the highway, whatever way that sort of blends together all the different approaches that you can use to bring who you are for the world, with the planet, and from the whole. And therefore, sometimes you might actually bring a pathway together with a runway and be able to create something. So again, there's a little bit of a metaphor there about helping you to move forward and know this contributions that you're making and the impact of those contributions. Now, the next three videos are kind of interesting, is because what I did was I dove into the notion of older, elder, mentor. So video number 5 was just a reminder of the story of me, myself, and I. And at that time, that became really important, because there was me as older, myself as elder, and I as mentor. And I said, well, this is kind of interesting, and it's a really wonderful way to be able to share that with you, the listeners. And so I started to dig into this notion of older and elder and mentor, so that this concept of, if I'm now an older, how might I reimagine that world? Remember, I use, instead of years old, I use years young. And so I wanted to reimagine this notion of, now I'm older, I'm this older. And then there was this sense of, how do I own my eldership, and being an elder with the community. And I needed to reframe what that meant for me. And it's not to take away from the elders of the churches, the elders of First Nations, the use in that way. It's just a way in which to remind yourself of this wisdom that you have, these insights, these investigations, these interpretations that you can share with others, and to be able to self-declare yourself as an elder, and to be recognized by others as an elder, is a really wonderful way in which to own what it is that's unfolding for you. Because then what you can do is get to a place where you've sort of won the storyline of older elder, and you have brought that forward to become a mentor. And as you mentor, it's a really great way to rescript the story in your head, because what's happening as a mentor is that you're interacting with others, this cross generational story, or even interacting with those who are going through the same story of older elder. But what you're doing is you're interacting with them in this sort of two-way trusted relationship structure, or sometimes called connection and arrangement. And it can be both personal, professional. But what's happening is that you're answering the questions very much that the mentee, who's ever interacting with you, is asking of you, to tap into your gifts, to tap into your lived experience. And that's where rescripting the contributions, the stories that you can share because of being a mentor. And that is sort of this notion of what you have won along this journey. Now, if you picked up this notion of now, own, and one, are just flipping the letters now to own to one. And it was just a fun way for me to share a little bit about the journey, about the ABC. And it's another way of looking at it as, to be what I see. Therefore, if I see what I need to be, what do I need to do? It's just me playing with ways in which to explain this journey and destinations that you are walking along, maybe running, cycling, again, the metaphor that fits for you. So in video number 6, I dove into the story of older a little bit more, and I used 10 words starting with O to be able to explain the story of older, this notion of convergence on older. In the video, I used the appreciation of older, but this notion of convergence was important. And let me just give you 3 of those. One was the word Om, which is a sound linked to meditation and the notion of quiet space. If there's anything that I've come to appreciate as I move into this older elder mentor storyline, is finding a sit space to just Om, the way in which I do it. I don't use necessarily the word Om, but it might fit for you. I have my own techniques of entry and exit when I'm doing some of my quiet space time. Another word was others' influence, and being very mindful about who influences you, and what is it that you're listening to, and how are others influencing you. Sometimes this aging story, you can pick it up and actually start to believe what other people are telling you, when in fact it may not be true whatsoever. I stopped listening to people's stories about aging where it came from this avoidance rather than this approach to living. And therefore, I paid attention to what the third use of O was, the newest opportunities, is who am I influencing? And I thought, that's a counterpoint to who's influencing me. I'm influencing who? And to do it through this notion of being an older elder mentor. And if I'm an older and I've reframed the way in which I'm looking at it, then I have a way in which my wholeheartedness comes to the surface, and I'm expressing myself in that way. The next video, number 7, was about the 10 E's of elder. And this was this notion of the realization of elder, to bring it real to you so that you could look at this story of being and having, doing, elder. And the three words that I started with E that I'll pick out for you now are expand, extend, and examine. Now, this notion of expand is, I think of it as sort of expanding this notion of the x-axis, if math is in your vocabulary, but the landscape is, I can open up the landscape and expand how I'm seeing things, because maybe because of my life, from a professional point of view, or the job that I was doing as an employee, executive, entrepreneur, educator, whatever might be unfolding for you, is sometimes my landscape may have been quite small, but as I find myself now as an elder, I could open up that landscape and see what's possible. Remember, I talked about the newest opportunities, what's out there that you can take a look at. Which meant then, if I wanted to extend, I think of that as the z-axis, to extend together and beyond, to really look at this notion of the future and what it's bringing to me and how I want to interact with it. I open up the landscape and look at what's possible. And what's fascinating for me is this whole AI, artificial intelligence world. And people talk about cognitive augmentation. In my landscape and extending it, I'm looking at cognitive articulation. Many years ago, when I did my doctoral work, I created a multidimensional learning approach, and I was waiting for virtual reality to catch up to it. And so I'm looking at what's possible here as I extend and expand the possibilities. And in a sense, I'm waiting for it to catch up to my imagination. So it's kind of fun to be in that and see what's taking place. The next word I wanted to bring forward was examine. Now, I didn't actually cover it in the video, but it came to me later, and it's really an important word, is to examine what is unfolding for you, and look at it through like in a lens of truth and worth and utility. Examining is of what I'm doing and I'm being and having. Is there this notion of truth to it and worth to it and utility? Because I don't want to waste my time, effort, and money. Those are my gifts. I want to share how I can wisely use those and be inspired in that, to have the sense of gratitude and presence and inspiration and enthusiasm and certainty in living my life, being this older elder and mentor. And therefore, this expand, extend, and examine are ways in which I can realize being an elder, which links me into the next video, which is about the 10 M's of mentor. And mentor is a really important educating approach for me. Is I would say to you, if you ask me if I was a coach or mentor, I would say I'm a mentor. I'm not a coach. Do I know how to coach? Yes. But I prefer to mentor. Actually, I prefer to be a facilitative mentor. And I explained a little bit about mentor earlier, just to remind you, sort of a two-way trusted alliance, arrangement, connection that is between two people, so that they can both learn from each other, both personally and if it's professionally, or in whatever way in which someone wants to tap into the mentor's lived experience. And this notion of mentor has actually surfaced in that I co-founded the International Mentoring Community to help certify those who want to go down the pathway of certification in mentoring and to be a competent mentor. And therefore, there are 10 M words that I brought forward in the video. And it was about the potentiality of mentor. And let me just give you those three. There was manage, maintain, and minding. The notion of manage is to look at the mentoring as a system. It's a way in which you're taking steps to interact and to know the pre, during, and after elements of interacting with this person and knowing how to manage those systems so that you, when your presence and in your inspiration, you know how you can then offer to the person ways in which to lead. And lead and manage are sort of like two sides of a coin, but with mentoring is that you often have to manage the system when you first meet your mentee. And to know that then allows for a very wonderful grounding that allows then it to move, all right, the ability to move forward in a way where there's this notion of the mutuality that exists. And that's what that manage and mentor can do. The other two words are maintain and minding. So the maintain component is the maintenance of serving as a mentor. And that might mean um, getting new insights and bringing in ways in which to support the mentee and yourself as you mentor. And the notion of maintain the systems, but it's also to maintain your awareness of who's influencing you and you are influencing who, which brings me to the third, minding. You'll notice I'm using the word minding, mind and ing versus mindfulness or mindless or mindful. I'm using minding as a verb to bring this conscious awareness to what is actually happening. And I could actually talk about the notion of conscious aging. There is a group, the Noetic Sciences, IONS, IONS. I'd recommend you go. They have a little course on conscious aging. And it's where I sort of picked up a little bit more and strengthened my sense. Remember, I go and I continue to learn as well. And therefore, minding is this way in which I go about doing what I do so that I can be conscious and I can then find my pathway forward and using this older elder mentor pathway that I have found for myself and I speak about. But again, remember, you can find your own pathway and through legacy and find ways in which to unfold that for you. I'm just giving you a possibility in these videos. Video number 9, as we start heading towards closing down this review. And again, I would just remind you to please subscribe to the channel so you can continue to get more insights about legacy and certainly what's going to unfold in the future. And I'm going to talk about that after video number 9 summary here. The number 9 video is about your next 50 transition. And what I did was I unpacked the words next 50 and transition. I use next 50 rather than your encore or your next 50 or your second act or your third act. There are many words to describe this notion of, okay, there's your first 50, and if we're going to live to 100, there is your, they talk about second 50 or portion up in thirds. I talk about the next 50. Because for some people, starting when you're 40 is actually a wise move as you start to engage in a preparation approach, developing your prevention backpack to get a handle on your practice continuance so that as you move through your 40s, 50s, and into your second 50, you have a lot more at your fingertips that you can bring forward in living this life that you've chosen for yourself. Now, the transition component was I talked about transactional, transformational, and transcendent, and how do they play themselves out in your life. And I'll leave it to that. Again, the link to that video that talks about those three transition approaches is there. And I would offer to you that it's a mix. You might do some transactional, then you might do some transcendent, transformational, transcendent, transactional, transformative. Again, it unfolds the way that it needs to unfold. But again, when you are aware of the transition, you have this conscious awareness of what's taking place, then you can balance off your intention and attention and use a lot of what I've shared in all these other videos to be able to bring some structure, the relationships, the strategy, or if you want to talk about the notion of the vision and the systems and the persons together. Maybe you want to talk about how I want to convert what I have, so that how do I construct it and what is the content so I can bring it forward. There's lots of ways of looking at it. And the simplest is, in my approach, a be, have, and do. That's what these videos are about. Just simply is about this notion of how do I want to approach, why do I want to approach, and who am I to be doing it with whom as I be, have, and do, and the transitions that go with that. The other thing that I talked about in that video was, and I sort of shared a little bit about it earlier, is the notion of wayfinding or finding your way, different kinds of pathways. And I explained a little bit more about those different pathways and the notion of causeway and doorway, so you can look at it a little bit more. So that brings us to the coverage of the first 9 in the series of Loverage Legacy. And here we are in video number 10 in this series of 10 videos. I usually share and shoot videos in groups of 10, sometimes 5, but this Loverage Legacy series is in 10 because I wanted to go over these different elements about leverage your legacy. So number 10 being the review, I also want to make an announcement of where I'm going next on my Saturday broadcasts. And it will be to do with outdoor educating and what are all the different elements that are associated with the outdoor educating, and to do it through the lens of the value of safety as a way in which to organize and deliver extraordinary outdoor experiences and services and products. So it's a way of actually taking Loverage Legacy and the legacy story that I have for myself that's unfolding is around outdoor educating and working with outdoor educators. And what might I be able to bring forward so that I can be of service in that capacity? So I'll be looking at the ways and means of using the value of safety as an organizing principle. So what you can do is manage safe systems for the participants while you lead the participants from safer practices. What practices would someone take up for themselves as they involve themselves in the outer doors? And how do they create safe systems? And the program will probably, and this is where I'm going to unfold it over the weeks to come, and be something along the lines of help them help you use these safer practices in the delivery of extraordinary experiences. So how to help them use their safe systems and safer practices, and to help learn from them how you as an outdoor educator would then develop the value of safety in what you offer and manage the safe systems and the safer practices of helping those to become better at their interactions with the outer doors. So again, it's my story helping people to learn it, and then my story of helping those who are helping other people, and being able to, in a sense, expand, extend, and examine outdoor education for the world, with the planet, and from the whole. So that's the now what aspect of making that announcement. So again, please subscribe to the video, and please subscribe to the channel, and like and comment with the video, knowing next Saturday, every Saturday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Mountain Daylight Time, depending on where we are in the time shifts. But Saturday mornings, I will be doing a live broadcast, topics related to outdoor education and educating. I've just done Loverage Legacy and what would unfold for the notion of outdoor educating and outdoor education. That's where we'll be going over the next 10 weeks. So with that, I wish you the best. Enjoy your time in the outdoors. Enjoy living from your extraordinary legacy. And I just so wish that you have fun doing whatever it is that you wish to be, have, and do.